Welcome back to another episode of Beantown versus Big Apple Sports. After missing one episode, I'm your host, Nico Sylvester, and it's great to be back. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Reed Becker and Alex Green. Today, we'll be discussing the offseason moves for the New England Patriots, New York Giants, and New York Jets. Reed, what are some moves the Giants have made this offseason?
So the Giants, first of all, the big move for the Giants is finally getting a top target at wide receiver, signing Kenny Galladay from the Detroit Lions to a 4-year, $72 million contract. Galladay finally, after the disaster with Odell Beckham Jr., the Giants finally, if he can stay healthy, will have their number one target to go alongside their role players. In addition, they also signed tight end Kyle Rudolph from the Minnesota Vikings for 2 years, $12 million. Rudolph is going to add to a position historically that the Giants have lacked in. And he, looking at his numbers in Minnesota, he's going to add some productivity in New York. They also signed Adoree Jackson, the Titans linebacker, for 3 years. To a 3-year contract, which I know a lot of Giants players were recruiting him to come to East Rutherford, excuse me. And then lastly, which is kind of the big one, re-signing Leonard Williams, 3-year, $63 million contract extension. This was one that the Giants kind of had a big-time negotiation stall, I guess you could say. There was rumors of him maybe just getting franchise tagged, but ever since coming from that trade from the Jets and really getting criticized by the New York media, Dave Gettleman did, for making that trade, Leonard Williams really picked up his game when he switched locker rooms at MetLife Stadium and really, quite frankly, has made the Jets look like in the bad in this situation with this trade. And the Giants found a gem.
Just discussing some of the moves for the Giants, I think a lot of the offseason moves they made were really good. I think they had one of the more underrated offseasons. I mean, obviously they signed Kenny Galladay, but I mean, looking at the other guys, they signed Kyle Rudolph, Adoree Jackson, Leonard Williams. Those are all some really good signings for them, and I think the Giants will be a lot better this season. Probably still won't make the playoffs in the NFC East. I think still a couple more years to go for them, but this is an offseason that's a move in the right direction for the Gettleman era in the Giants.
I don't know about the playoffs. I mean, well, they first of all, the NFC East is probably the worst division in football, and they almost made it last season with what they had. I mean, I think they're still pretty much right up there with how bad the division is.
Reed, do you have any insight about the Jets? I mean, what are they doing this offseason?
The Jets, actually, let's just start as recent as yesterday. They traded Sam Darnold to the Carolina Panthers for multiple draft picks. If I'm not mistaken, it was a 6th, 4th, and 2nd that they got from Carolina for Darnold. But if I'm just going to quickly react to this trade, it was reported a lot that they were probably going to move on from Darnold. Quite honestly, I don't think they should have moved on from him. I think that he wasn't given a fair shot here in New York. His weapons really were suspect, to say the least. And quite honestly, I mean, I don't really love the return. You're giving up like a franchise quarterback and you're getting late round picks. I mean, that's not something I probably would have done. But before that, there's also been a lot, starting at the wide receiver. Corey Davis, 3-year, $37.5 million contract, who came over from the Titans. That now gives them a weapon, finally, that they'll have a receiver for whoever that new quarterback will become in September. They also signed defensive end Carl Lawson for a 3 years, $45 million contract, who fits new head coach Robert Saleh's 4-3 scheme. And they also needed desperately some new pass rush as well. This was an interesting stat when I was doing some reading about this Carl Lawson signing. The last significant investment on an edge rusher was back in 2008 on Calvin Pace. So it just shows you some how much struggle the Jets have had with that position going back a couple of years now. And the last thing I'm just going to mention about the Jets is that they missed out. I think some people on Jets Twitter were unhappy about this, but missing out on Juju Smith-Schuster at the wide receiver position in free agency.
Yeah, I think while the Jets missed out on, like you said, Juju Smith-Schuster at the wide receiver position, I think they got a good one in Corey Davis, who's the Jets going to give the Jets QB finally a weapon on the offensive side of the ball. They haven't really had that for a while now, and I agree with you. I don't think the Jets should have traded away Sam Darnold. I guess getting picks for him is decent. I mean, it's a sixth rounder for this year, which isn't that good, but then second rounder and fourth rounder for next year. Who knows? They could potentially trade those picks and turn that into a player. That whether they used those picks to trade or they just draft a player with those picks, we'll see to be determined. But I think the Jets, this isn't like the Giants. This is a step in the right direction for them. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs in the AFC East. I think the Bills will continue to be at the top of that division, and the Patriots, with their offseason signing, we'll get to in a little bit. I think they'll be right back in the conversation for the AFC East title. So I think the Jets have a long way to go still, but this is a step in the right direction, like the Giants.
So Alex, what are some moves the Patriots have made this offseason? What do you think?
Patriots made a lot of moves this offseason. Patriots fans knew that they were going to have a lot of cap space heading into this offseason, and it was just going to come down to, was Bill Belichick going to spend the money? He hasn't really done it in the past, and this year he did. They re-signed Cam Newton to the quarterback spot, which some Patriots fans aren't a huge fan of. I personally like the move. I think, yes, while Cam had a bad season last year, he didn't have any weapons really on the offensive side of the ball, so it was hard for him to succeed with the weapons he had. I think the biggest, they signed the best two tight ends, arguably, in the free agency class, and Jonnu Smith. They signed him to a 4-year, $50 million contract, and then they also signed Hunter Henry to a 3-year, $37.4 million contract. Like I said, these were the two best tight ends in the free agent market. And you look back in Carolina, Cam thrived when he had Greg Olsen in Carolina. So now he has two capable tight ends in Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, both of which are actually also decent blocking tight ends as well. So that should help them in their run game. Cam is a mobile quarterback. He likes to run a lot. And they also have James White, Damian Harris, Rex Burkhead in the backfield, a plethora of running backs that should benefit also from the Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry signings. Sticking with the offense, they signed two wide receivers and Nelson Aguilar. They signed them to a 2-year, $22 million contract, and also Kendrick Bourne, 3 years, $50 million contract. So not really big name receivers, but Nelson Aguilar had a phenomenal breakout season in Las Vegas last year with the Raiders, and then Kendrick Bourne was always a solid receiver for the 49ers. He has, I think, struggled with some injuries in the past, but hopefully he should be a decent weapon for Cam. On the defensive side of the ball, they signed Matthew Judon to a 4-year, $56 million deal. That will help the Patriots linebacker core with Hightower returning for the 2021 season after he sat out the 2020 season due to COVID concerns. And then this is going to be hurting for the defense. Patrick Chung unexpectedly retiring. But they do have plenty of safety depth, though. They signed Jalen Mills to a 2-year, $24 million contract. He is a guy who can play both cornerback and safety. So anywhere on the secondary, Jalen Mills can play. So I think their safety depth is fine. They also have Kyle Duggar as well, the most recent draft from 2019 or 2020, excuse me. So I think the safety depth will be fine for the Patriots. And then finally, the last big move, they bought back Trent Brown in the trade, which they gave up pretty much nothing to get him. So I'm a huge believer of that. Trent Brown already knows the system. He knows his game. He's worked with Belichick before, and he loves the New England culture. And then they re-signed David Andrews to a 4-year, $19 million contract, which is honestly a steal. David Andrews, I think, is a very quality center, one of the top centers in the league, if you ask me. And getting him for 4 years, $19 million is honestly a steal, and it's probably one of the better contracts in all of free agency this offseason. And with the additions of Trent Brown and David Andrews, the O-line should be one of the top in the league. All in all, I think this was a really, really good offseason for the Patriots, and they should be right back in the top of the AFC East, like I said earlier.
The only thing I'm going to say about the Patriots is I still have a lot of questions about Cam Newton. I understand not having training camp and having signed late, and by the way being in COVID. But seeing what happened towards the end of his tenure in Carolina, I have concerns about him staying healthy and just his accuracy with the football. Towards the end of his time in Carolina, it did not go that well in those categories.
That's all the time we have for today. Join us next time when we discuss the early season plays of the Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees. Thanks for watching.